Oh, yeah. Ooh. Yeah. You walk up the line, time after time, thinking things will stay the same. That the game isn't played that way. You've got to stay on track. Walk on, watch your back. Walk on, stay on track. Walk on, watch your back.
Thanks for joining us for the socialengineer.org podcast. This is our very first episode 001. I'm putting 2 zeros before it because I think that kind of gives us hope that it will keep going for hundreds of episodes. A little bit about our panel here today. Myself, Chris H., Logan WHD. We also have Maddie, a.k.a. Mutz. Maddie, say hi.
Hi.
We got Elwood, or Jim. Jim's his real name. Elwood's his a.k.a. Jim.
Hi there.
And Dave Kennedy, a.k.a. Relic from Secure State. How you doing, Dave?
Hey, I'm doing great.
So we decided to kind of kick off our first podcast talking a little bit about what is social engineering and our site and what we are trying to do with it here. So first, I guess to talk a little bit about what is social engineering and why it gets such a bad rap in the market today. I guess we had to define it. I don't know. What do you think, guys? If we had to define it, we probably would define social engineering as a process that where somebody gets deceived or manipulated into giving confidential or critical information away. And that's probably why it gets such a bad rap in the market, especially if you do any social engineering research on Google. A lot of times you'll come up with sites that only talk about how to get free things, free pizza, how to get free chicks, free coffee, whatever it is. But
Wait. Free chicks?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to comment on that too. You beat me to it.
Well, you can go to Google and search for it. You won't find it on socialengineer.org, but you can definitely find it on YouTube or something like that.
Alrighty.
But through our research, we found that might be a part of social engineering, but actually social engineering covers so much more, and it covers a lot of different jobs and different industries. We've talked to people from doctors like psychologists and researchers, military people, law enforcement, penetration testers, all different types of fields where they actually use different aspects of social engineering in their daily lives. Even going as far as talking about how children and parents use social engineering just in everyday life and family. So that kind of spawned our site, social-engineer.org, where we've come to put a collection, a framework of all the different aspects of social engineering together, how they can be used, what uses they have, defining those things, and then giving examples of how they're used in different parts of life and different industries. And I think the main goal of the site, the way that we really designed it, was to just help people become aware of these different parts of social engineering because they are used widely in the world today for a malicious purpose. So by becoming aware and educated, we help people to hopefully fight against the bad effects of those things and the free chicks, which really probably doesn't work.
Everyone's like, but where do we hear about the free chicks, man?
Yeah, we should probably say we're not going to discuss that in the podcast.
Or you just say we'll discuss it at the very end and then not cover it all.
That's a good idea. Then get everyone to stay, right?
Yeah, everybody's going to stay through it. So.
Social Engineering 101. We will have Dave discuss free chicks at the end of the podcast, and then we'll send that part to his wife.
Oh, oops.
Yeah. So first, before we start, I want to just thank, we have a sponsor for this program, and it's Reed, John E. Reed and Company. They can be found at www.reid.com. Johnny Reed's a professional interrogation training company, and they sponsored us for this podcast by giving us some excellent training on CD about interrogation. Some really quality stuff, and I think, Elwood, you just went to a class of theirs, didn't you?
Yeah, not too long ago. It was a great experience. Drove down there, and Lou Sinise was the instructor. It was a great experience. He really understood what he was talking about and had a lot of relevancy.
So, I mean, how does interrogation fit into pen testing? Because that's what you do for work. So how does that fit into it?
Well, a lot of it is in an interview interrogation, the way they present it, you're trying to get information out of an individual that may not be in their best interest to reveal to you. So that's somewhat similar to what we do when, say, we're trying to trick someone into giving up some personal information, whether it be something as extreme as username, password, or just other, say, operational information about an organization. So a lot of the techniques on how to control conversations, how to manipulate the direction and framing, and just presenting yourself in a way that the individual feels as if it's in their interest to give that information to you. There was a lot of similarities there.
So I don't know about you, but like Maddie, we were talking about this before. What do we think of when we think of interrogation?
Well, the first thing I think of is like torture and needles and stuff like that. But
that's what I was thinking. I'm thinking of waterboarding. So when I hear interrogation and pen testing, I don't know, somehow it just doesn't seem to fit in my head.
Yeah, I think that's Hollywood for you.
It wouldn't work for me? We were talking about having a new offset class, Waterboarding 101. I'm sure we get some people coming,
I'd give it a shot.
Yeah, heck, right there. We have our first sign-up, Maddie. I told you we'd sell it.
I guess though, I talked to Matt a bit before, and I guess that the whole concept of interrogation has changed, at least from the way that I've understood it, because from something violent and something something forceful, eventually Matt has sort of shown me a different side of interrogation, where you're actually coming from a totally different direction, from a loving, caring, understanding angle, which changes everything. So to me, this has actually been very interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to really talking to him, getting more into that, because this really is a hot topic. And like you said, after talking to Matt, I definitely see where this fits into a security aspect a lot more. Yeah. But before we get into that, I just want to talk a little bit about the site. A lot of people have been emailing in and asking how they can contribute to us, or what else is involved in the site. So, first of all, site www.social-engineer.org. If you go there, we have a whole framework listed for social engineering. We already talked about that. But in addition, we have a bunch of resources. We have on our resources page, we have a few videos we're going to be adding to that as often as we can, showing some of the different technology tools and how they can be used in a social engineering aspect. We have some tools on there. The Perturba guys really came through and helped us with Maltego Mesh. It's an awesome tool. It ties right into Firefox, and it helps grab social information and personal information right from the pages you're on. Could definitely be used in a pen test. And then Social Engineer Toolkit, which actually Dave is here today with us. He's the developer of that tool. That's a phenomenal tool. That thing just really has been kind of rocking the community. A lot of people coming on talking about SET and what it can do, and a lot of interest in really automating some of these social engineer attacks. Maybe brief, Relic, you just want to tell us kind of how did this come about?
Well, I mean, we at the current company that I work with right now, we do a lot of social engineering attacks and things like that. And you had mentioned to me a while ago that you were coming out with the social-engineer.org and coming out with a framework for that, and thought it was a really cool idea, to contribute to the community, to try to incorporate a lot of different types of attacks that might help you on a pen test and really bring awareness out there about the different types of attacks that are out there. And there's definitely more to come. It's definitely a living, breathing project for me. So, definitely continue with the updates and those type of things. But, really it automates a lot of different types of advanced attacks that can really help you con people or try to gain their trust, or really try to compromise their system and attack their system in a way that might have not been done before, or to the extent that it was. One thing that I know when I was doing them was it took a significant amount of time to actually set these types of attacks up, hours getting ready for just, a 2-minute thing that you were going to do. So, SET really tries to automate a lot of that and really make it quick for you guys to go out there and actually assess it in a pretty orderly manner.
Dave, I think we actually talked about this literally 2 days ago when I actually told you that setting up the whole client-side aspect of the attack is probably the longest part in the whole penetration testing. Setting up a fake website and doing all that, while the actual infection or the phone call is probably, it probably takes like only a couple of minutes. So SCT does cut down times by a very, very, very significant factor.
Absolutely, and again, it's going to continue to improve. I mean, it's only going to go up from here. So, the different types of attacks will definitely get more advanced. Definitely help you again with the other things that might have taken a long time to really cut back on that.
One of the things that I really liked about it, we got a lot of feedback, a lot of positive feedback for people who've downloaded it and used the tool, is that it ties right in with the Metasploit framework. So it's not only a powerful tool, but behind it you have this very powerful framework that enables you to use a lot, like the exploits, like creating a malicious PDF or a doc file or these other that malicious web page, and that new feature you're building into it in the next couple of weeks. Do we even want to talk about that yet?
We could. I don't have any problem.
I think it's going to scare people personally.
Probably.
Getting any website from the internet and being able to have that sit on your local server. It will look, feel, react the same as the real website, but planted in it. What, we're going to have a malicious iframe, or what are you going to have in there? Some kind of malicious?
Yeah, so the concept behind it is, when you're going and doing a pen test, you're doing it against a company. You want to, use techniques that is really going to gain their trust, really make sure that they feel comfortable with what they're doing. And, it could be anything. It could be, your Gmail or MSN or things like that. But what it's specifically designed to do is, you type in the URL to the website, and the code will actually go out and pull the entire website and clone it, automatically import it into SET, and actually set up a fake website with that. And then you have a variety of different options that you can use. If you're familiar with SET right now, one of the main attack vectors to the website type attacks is through Java applets that are self-signed by the Microsoft Corporation. And, of course, everybody's going to trust the Microsoft Corporation, right?
Of course.
Yeah. So, when that pops up and they say, do you want to execute this update for, the Microsoft update, they hit yes, and it compromises their computer. It's the same concept behind that, which will be one avenue, is the Java applet attacks. But also, as you mentioned, there's some tight integration within the Metasploit framework, and looking at doing client-side attacks as well. So to inject multiple iframes within the website. So as soon as you browse that site, again, looking identical to the one that you typed in, it'll automatically start launching a series of client-side exploits at them and attempting to compromise the system. And then lastly, if you don't want to go the malicious route, going in for Java applets and putting backdoors in the systems and things like that, it'll either insert new username and password fields, or it'll clone current username and password fields as well. So if you were to clone something like Gmail, for example, it would actually clone that specific site, and the username and passwords would then be harvested when they type it in.
Yeah, it's definitely going to change the way pen testing goes on that side. Now, the great part is we have some light tutorials. We have some excellent videos on the Social Engineer Org website, but if you want to get some in-depth, it's actually built into part of the Metasploit course, right, Maddie?
Yes.
There's a whole section of that, and that's a free course, so you can go to offensive-security.com and check out that course and actually get the lesson on set right from those modules.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. It's going to be hot when it comes out. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm definitely excited.
So that's part of it. I guess the other things you can do, we had a newsletter launch just this week. That really came out amazing. I can't believe how many people have signed up for that and how many people have written back about how much they like the articles. I think I love the SCT article because I wrote it, of course, but I think, Elwood, your article got a lot more press release on that, man. People are loving this when did you start to suck at social engineering article that you wrote. Really,
I'm glad it went over well.
Yeah, it did. A lot of good feedback. A lot of people emailed in saying thanks for that article. Got not only a good laugh out of it, but made a lot of sense. If you want to sign up for that, you can email us at newsletter@social-engineer.org. And we have Twitter. On Twitter, we're Human Hacker, so you can check us out there too and follow us. A couple other things we wanted to do before we got to Matt. We wanted to thank a couple other people because actually a lot of people. The site itself is completely community-driven. If you go to the site and you go to the team page, you'll see just a long list of all different types of people. I mean, we got people from all different walks of life that came in and they helped us in one way or another, some like Dave building tools, others contributing writing doing research, helping with the website. We got like our gatekeeper, Rawjaw. He's on there like 24/7, making sure it looks pretty. It was a real community effort, and we didn't know what to expect when we announced this whole idea. And then we've kind of put the word out there. Hey, anybody want to get involved? We didn't know if we were going to get booed out of town, or if we were going to get one or two people interested. And the feedback was just amazing. So I just want to say thanks to everybody for that, and keep going, because it's just going to continue growing. I think we were talking to Chris Nickerson on the Exotic Liability podcast. He said that the site's a living, breathing entity, and I think that's the truth. It really is going to keep growing with the community support. I also want to thank Exotic Liability for their podcast interviewing us as we were launching the site. That really helped promote it, and Paul.com, too. We got a lot of great feedback from those guys reviewing our site and actually using it on their podcast and talking about it. So, I don't know, did I miss anything, guys? I hope not.
No, I think you're good.
Okay.
Did you hear, I think Carlos Perez mentioned the Social Engineering Toolkit on one of the video podcasts they do every month.
No, really?
Yeah, he said, I catch bits and pieces of it, but he said, hey, who's gonna accept a certificate to the Microsoft Corporation? I know I would. So, definitely giving a good shout out, which is really cool to hear.
Yeah, that is nice. It just to kind of, again, reiterate, it just amazes me how many people in the security community have checked out the site, gone to it, and have a lot of positive things to say about it. So I guess it kind of helps us to see that we're doing the right thing. We got a lot of people behind it, so we're just going to keep on growing. I guess, we don't want to keep anyone waiting anymore. I think we have Matt on the line. Matt, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so we got Matt Churchill. Matt, you are a previous law enforcement agent, aren't you?
Yeah, I worked for Sheriff's Office for about 10 years, where I was in criminal investigations for the last 5. So I got to go to a lot of good training. I did the cyber crimes for them. So as a part of that, I went through all the computer forensics classes, and then with the investigations part, I went through some interview and interrogation classes. So it was.
What has a nickname for you? Oh, what's his nickname again?
I got a lot of nicknames for him, really.
How about the one you can say on the podcast? Remember, that's family friendly.
To be honest, I'm forgetting, because I made one up one day.
I think you called him the Fuzz.
Sounds good to me. Sounds like something I'd say.
Yeah, I think it was.
The fuzz, the pork, the bacon, wow. I don't know.
Excellent.
Great. Now when you leave,
in the law enforcement community.
When you leave, after people are listening to this, you're going to get pulled over like 10 times. You know that?
Yeah, totally.
Word's out already.
Yeah, the word's out. So, Matt, you went through some interrogation training as a law enforcement agent?
Yeah, I went to a couple classes. Generally, they're like 5 days, a week long, depending on the class. But I went to probably 3 of those, 3 or 4 different classes, and then, we used that stuff every day. We talked to people all the time, so we were always interviewing somebody, whether it was, the classic 2 people in a room, 2 chairs and a desk type situation, or, we would go to somebody's house or out on the street. We were always talking to people, so that stuff was always useful.
See, to me, the first time I ever had any kind of interrogation training was just recently with the Johnny Reed company, the stuff that they sent us, and that was phenomenal. But before that, my only in-depth thought about interrogation was what you see on TV. So, how closely is what we see on shows like Law & Order, CSI, other shows like that, how close is that linked to what is in real life for police interrogations?
Yeah, I never watch any of those shows, so I don't really know what they're like. But, take CSI. That has had, they label it the CSI effect. It's had a huge part where people watch those shows and they expect us to have a whole lot more information right away than what we actually do. I think it's given some people false confidence when they go into the interview room. If I did it, show me the DNA evidence, show me the fingerprints, show me this, show me that. And they have, when the officer can't provide that right away, they're not as willing to talk about it. And I think that's had a little bit of an effect on the way people do things. In Law and Order, I've never really watched that one. But yeah, I mean, you get the typical, people think of coercion and, the cops get physical, and I've never once seen that. So that, to me, in my world, that really doesn't exist.
So it's what, just completely made up usually what's on TV?
I don't know if I'd say completely. I'm sure that happens somewhere. But, I've never seen it, so I can't.
So no slamming people up against walls, no good cop, bad cop kind of atmosphere?
There's probably a little bit of the good cop, bad cop type stuff. I mean, that does have some value. I mean, most people are expecting that, but, it has its place, and that can be a useful tool. I mean, get somebody in there who gets a little angry and gets the suspect riled up a little bit, and then, because that can throw them off their game a little bit, and then you've got somebody who is there to comfort them and, well, that guy's a jerk, don't listen to him, and, try to draw them out a little more and build up some trust that the bad cop can't do.
What degree, to what degree would you make someone uncomfortable in an interrogation room? I mean, sometimes on TV you see all these things where they say, bring the guy, tons of soda or turn the heat on or something like that. So how far would you actually go to make someone feel uncomfortable and put him out of his, surroundings and comfort zone?
Yeah, I never really did any of that stuff. I think making them uncomfortable, the way that I would do it is you can tell when somebody's stressed or when they're not. So if they're sitting there answering every question and I'm hitting on a particular topic that they're not really responding to, then I want to find another topic that's going to throw them off a little bit. If I can make them uncomfortable in the fact that they're talking about something they don't want to, then I know I'm hitting on something good. And then they might make a few more mistakes as well. They might say something that they really don't want to say or shouldn't have said for them. If I can kind of change their mindset a little bit and change the state of the interview.
So you don't actually go too far off into altering your environment in order to make them feel awkward or feel uncomfortable?
Yeah, I've never done it. We really didn't have... The way we did things, it was we were nice about everything, I mean, you bring somebody in, you want a glass of water, do you want to pop, whatever you need, do you want to use the bathroom first? I mean, we don't want to give all our interviews were recorded, so we didn't want to give anybody watching that interview later on the chance to say that we coerced them in any way.
So is that a better tactic, actually, to be overly nice, to be more giving in to the person, to get them to admit guilt as opposed to kind of being the hard guy?
Yeah, that's kind of the way I always did it. You want them to trust you. Eventually you're going to ask them to tell you something that, when in their best interests, they shouldn't tell you. And you have to do everything you can to get them to admit their guilt. And if you start out as a friend, somebody that they can trust or rely on, and, that can help you later on.
Related to this, when they first come in and they have different preconceptions as far as how the interview process is going to work, how much does that affect the interview situation? For instance, someone coming in and sitting down and, okay, so which of you is the good cop or which of you is the bad cop? Does that play any role?
That happens. I've been in a couple interviews where one of the officers starts, getting upset and kind of frustrated and yelling, and the suspect sits, they look like they're engaged, but then their body language changes and they kind of roll back in their chair, sit back, and go, okay, well, you're the bad cop, and they expect it, and that's not going to work. I think people see that type of stuff on TV, and they do have that preconceived notion. But, generally, if you if you talk about it, you can kind of work around stuff like that.
How do you respond to that? I mean, someone, like if you came in the interrogation room and the other guy was a little upset, and someone says, "Hey, so I guess you're the good cop, you're the bad cop." How do you respond to that?
Yeah, just push through it. I mean, if there's two officers in the interview room and one of them isn't getting any response, generally you kind of push them out of the room, and they can see where they're not being effective, and before they become a real detriment, they should pull out.
Yeah, I don't know if you have like a quirky comeback, like, "No, we're both the bad cop," or something like that.
No, I'm the worst cop.
Yeah.
I'm not that
He's bad and I'm worse.
Yeah, the bad cop went home. Now we're here. I don't know. Okay.
Well, so along those lines, with people having different preconceptions and whatnot, what about, say, deception and lies and whatnot within the interview process? How much freedom do you have to utilize that as a tool, and how well does that work?
Deception is allowed, right?
Yeah, we're allowed to lie. Generally, that's pretty effective. If it can go towards making the other person feel comfortable. One of the examples I like, we had a couple officers interviewing one guy. He was a peeping Tom, and he would look in women's windows. One of the things that he liked, he had a white boot fetish, and he liked cowgirls, and that was kind of his thing.
White-booted cowgirls.
Yeah, so what the officers did when they're talking to him, they're like, "Oh yeah, white boots are okay, but I really like red cowboy boots. I mean, those are the best." And they were trying to say, "Hey, we're all friends here. You can trust us. I don't think that's weird." Did
it work?
So they use that deception. They lie to make the other person feel comfortable. If the minute you judge somebody and they think that, if a suspect thinks that you think they're weird or, that they're a little off, they're going to stop talking to you. So did it work
in that example?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it worked. He felt comfortable, and he started telling more stories, and the guys, once they got out of the interview room, they were laughing. And
but how far can you go with a lie, though? Like, could they have come in the room and said, "We have pictures of you looking in this woman's window over here"?
Yeah, you can do that. You just have to be very careful with what you do. There's some people who will say, if you say, "I have your fingerprints," and they know, say a burglary suspect, they know they wore gloves when they went into the house, and you say, "I have your fingerprints," they're going to know that you don't have anything. So you need to meter that and not say things that might get you in trouble, I guess.
How far would you go, though, with a lie? I mean, would you, set up props and make something creative and intricate, or is it just, on the spot, you just say something which might not be entirely true? Do you actually, set up a lie, set up a big SE gig against the guy?
Sometimes. I mean, I guess as far as props, I mean, we would go in sometimes with, a labeled DVD that says surveillance footage or something like that. I mean, you can throw that down, or you just put it off to the side and not even really reference it, but they're going to look at it.
Yeah.
You can walk in with a bunch of papers and, talk about how strong your case is and let them make assumptions. I mean, I didn't go to too much trouble on lying, generally because we really didn't need to. We didn't build huge backstories or anything. If we were going to interrogate somebody, we were pretty far along in our case.
That's a pretty interesting tactic, though, because I can see that definitely working in a social engineering environment. You have a CD or a stack. It makes you look. We call that pretexting,
prepared.
Right? It makes you look prepared. I mean, pretexting. You look like you're going into this room with all this information. You have the case already done. We basically just need you to sign this confession, and then we're out of here. And really, you're going in there blind. You have nothing. You just think the guy's guilty.
Yeah, and I mean, that was one of the tactics we would take is hey, we've already done our case. Our case is done. We wanted to talk to you, give you an opportunity to give us your side of the story. I mean, that's really the only thing we're missing is your story, why you did it, and we're here to give you a chance to get this stuff out. And, the judge is going to get all our reports. They're going to get all our paperwork. This is your opportunity to give the judge advance notice of why you did that and that you're not a bad person and that there were reasons for what you did.
How often did you actually have to, do these type of, fibbing to the person that you're trying to go after? I mean, was it pretty frequent that you didn't have enough evidence against them or anything like that?
We had so many different cases. I mean, that's the problem. So the cases were so varied. But that's what made it interesting. Each one was different. There were, you might do one or two of those sit-down interviews a week, or you end up, doing 4 in one day.
Well, something that comes to mind with what you're saying there, though, is you mentioned that you would go through the interview process later on in the investigation once you have a fairly decent idea of what has happened or what this individual's role that they played was. Why wouldn't you say go through that interview process early on in the investigation and maybe you might get lucky and get a confession right away and save some time and get through more cases?
It depends. That can backfire on you. As soon as you talk to somebody once, they may never talk to you again. A lot of times they say you've got one shot to do it, and if you do it without all the information you can get, then you might tip your hand. You might, again, it's that false confidence, and at that point, if they don't know you're looking at them and you don't have all your ducks in a row, they may go contact a lawyer. They won't talk to you again. So,
that's interesting because that's just like, to me, that sounds just like social engineering. I mean, the most important aspect of social engineering is information gathering. And if we try to launch, let's say, our audit or our attack against a company that we're auditing before we have all of our information, all of our ducks in a row, like you said, most likely it's going to fail. It's going to fail miserably. And the best way to almost guarantee success is just to have as much information as possible. The more info you have, the more prepared you are, the better your pretext is, the more solid you sound, the better chance and likelihood you have of accomplishing that engagement.
Absolutely.
Sounds just like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what would you do? Like if you determine in an interview or an interrogation someone's lying, so you get this feeling, whatever it is, you see it, you have proof maybe this person's lying. What's your action plan? Like what's the next steps that you take to solidify that, or where do you go from there?
It kind of depends on the feeling you get about that person, and how you judge their personality. There's a couple ways you can do it. You can either, directly confront them and kind of jump on it right away and say, hey, I know you're lying because of this, tell me the truth. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Another way you can go about it is just to keep asking questions about the situation, kind of draw out more details and slowly build that contradiction so that they know by the time you get to a certain point, you can go, all right, because of A, B, C, D, E, and F, I know you're lying, and you need to tell me the truth about it. And sometimes that works. That way is a lot more non-confrontational.
That's an interesting point.
What's the most common reaction to a confrontation like that? I mean, what does someone who just realizes that you caught them lying and they know that you know that they're lying, what's their first reaction?
Defeat.
Defeat. You pawned me.
Yeah.
No, if you do like a direct confrontation, I found people shut up and they don't talk. But if you build it up and that dawning realization of they said way too much and now they're stuck, then their story starts to unravel and they start to admit bit by bit, and you can kind of draw it out from there. So I liked that route. I didn't like really the direct confrontation. And some of that goes towards my personality as well.
Along those lines, though, who is harder to interview in that sort of circumstance? Someone that is a relatively decent liar that has a nice, big, elaborate story, or someone that just doesn't talk?
That kind of depends, too. I mean, somebody who has a story they're going to try to be more detailed, where you can build those contradictions a little better. somebody who doesn't talk is tough, but you can keep at it and keep pushing, and then it's your job to keep talking and get them to a point where they will talk about the situation.
Yeah, there's like people like psychopaths. I mean, Maddie and I were talking about this. When you hear that term, automatically I think of like Ted Bundy or some serial killer, some horrible, violent person. But if you look it up, the definition is basically someone without a conscience, someone who doesn't really believe the things that they're doing are wrong.
Actually, 3 to 5% of the population have been diagnosed as psychopaths. It doesn't make them killers. It just makes them lack empathy or not have the ability to feel remorse over something that they're doing to someone else.
So which one of us? No, just kidding. Definitely Maddie. No.
Stop it.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah. So, how do you, if you have that kind of a person, that actually honestly believes that what they did is right. They don't really feel remorse or guilt for it. Can you successfully interrogate that kind of a person and get them to admit guilt?
They're tough to deal with. With them, it's not so much about maybe admitting guilt. It's about pinning them down to the circumstances, because they're not going to admit to, yeah, I did it. But if you can say, okay, well, where were you yesterday? All right, you were at this house at this time. If you can get them to admit to being in the area, to like knowing the victim or whatever, you can pin down certain details. We've had some people who, it's funny, when they don't have any guilt towards the situation. One guy, one situation, he would admit to everything but what we were trying to talk to him about. And he would just say, I don't know. Well, I don't know about that. But he was free-flowing with every other piece of information, except that was like a burglary case, too. He admitted to drug use in the past and all sorts of criminal activity, but what we were trying to talk to him about, just because he didn't really have any guilt on that. So those people are kind of hard to deal with sometimes.
Yeah, I can almost imagine that, because it's like from a social engineering standpoint, you definitely, the more you believe your story, because it's, we were having this conversation actually on the Exotic Liability podcast, that it's not just a matter of believing in your lie. It's like you have to be the character that you are pretending to be in order to accomplish that goal. If you don't believe it even for an ounce, there's going to be somebody who can see through that and determine that you're not truthful. And from a social engineering aspect, that will definitely create failure on your part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think what's good is Matt, you helped do some research finding some of these interrogations that have happened. And we have that one interrogation. Elwood, what was that? Who was it again that was being interrogated in this audio clip that we have?
I believe it's the grandmother of a missing child, where the daughter, the mother of the child, is a suspect.
Yeah, and this is a famous one, right? I always forget the name. Isn't that terrible? It's the Casey.
Yeah, it's Casey Anthony in, I think it was Florida.
Right, Casey Anthony. So a couple of the video clips just to set them up, but we had two. The first one I think is a minute, maybe a little over a minute in length. I'll play it, and then you can maybe you can just tell us, Matt, like what kind of tactics are being used here, or what's happening in this interrogation that helps us to really pick out some things that we can use in social engineering. So I'll play that now. So I think this first one's about a minute or a little bit over.
We're looking for your grandmother. The problem is, listen to me. We want to help. Okay? All we want to do is help. Cindy, listen, please. I can't help if you go out there and start changing things.
I'm not
changing and adding
anything.
Things.
Okay.
And that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Okay?
All right.
Listen to me.
You guys were so good the first 4 days. You guys were so good at coming to the house and everything. And then it stopped. No one came from missing persons. No one came from anything. We're in the dark. So we're a grieving family, frustrated as heck because I didn't even care where Casey was at. I still don't care where Casey's at. All I want is Kaylee back. Do you understand that?
Listen to me. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get us on the same sheet of music.
Well, we should have been on the same sheet. Remember the first time before I talked to the media?
I agree.
Said, I want to know what you want me to tell them.
Cindy, you're not listening to me, okay? Please. I've sat here, I've listened to you. We're trying to work with you, but now's the time where I need to tell you we need to focus. We need to focus on the right thing. We don't need to focus on creating stories, changing testimonies, changing what we said.
I'm not changing anything that I've ever said.
We are focusing on trying to find Kaylee. That's it. That's all. Okay.
But I don't want to keep hearing from people that you guys think she's dead, because she's not dead.
Have you ever seen me on the news?
No.
Okay. Have you ever seen him on the news?
No.
Okay. We're not out there talking to people. My phone won't stop ringing from every news agency to get me to talk about this. I won't. Do you know why? Because I'm working on finding Kaylee.
Well, that is out of respect for you as well.
So, Matt, what's going on in this interrogation here?
Well, I really like this clip because it kind of showcases how difficult these can be. In this situation, this is the grandmother of the suspect, and she's not the suspect herself, and it makes it tough because you want to be, how can you try to shut her up while still being, nice enough to get info from her? The beginning of the clip, he kind of points out what she's been doing wrong, and she immediately gets defensive and kind of throws it, or she goes on the offense, actually, and tries to make the officer defensive, and kind of defend his actions and take the focus off of her, and he's trying to softly shut her up so that, he can ask the questions, and, it just kind of showcases the difficulty of it. You can hear him at one point, where he's like, shh, shh, and trying to, calm her down, and he's kind of, you can hear his voice, he's kind of agitated, and it's not necessarily a calm interview, and it just kind of shows how difficult those things can be, and trying to, he has to kind of make his words match hers in a sense, and mirror some of her emotions so that they can be on the same level. And again, he's trying to build that trust at the end of saying, have you ever seen me on the news? No, it's because I'm out working the case. I'm doing this for you. He's trying to build up that trust when she doesn't want it.
That's a really good point. When you sent me this clip, there was also, we'll link this in the podcast notes, there was a YouTube video of this interrogation. And just what you said, it hit a note, because what I saw on the YouTube is when she's trying to take control of the conversation, she puts her hand out. And the officer, he kind of grabbed her hand and put his hand over hers, and then shh, and she calmed down. But then when she wanted control again, she took her other hand and put it on top of his. And then what he did right away is he put his hand kind of sandwiching it in and taking that. I just remember hearing that in the Reed interrogation class, that this is one tactic of kind of letting them know my hand's on top, I'm in control. But it wasn't like he was grabbing her to subdue her. It was a very calming, I'm here to comfort you. You can almost see in the video, he leaned into her. He was really there trying to calm her down and comfort her.
He was.
Right.
He was. The thing that captured my attention the most was when she started almost throwing a fit. Then his voice was much, much calmer. He wasn't at the same tone that she was. He was like, listen, he was trying to take everything down a couple of notches and bring down the conversation back to a talking state and not to a shouting state. I think that was the thing that caught my attention the most.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that they've taught in some classes is if you can mirror them initially, and if you can make your voice, if they're yelling at you, you yell at them and match that tone, and then you bring your tone down and bring it calmer, and they'll kind of follow you. Yeah, so nice. You mirror them initially and then take them to where you want them to be.
Yeah, that's a really interesting tactic. I can really see how that could be used, not just interrogation, but I can really see how that can be used in an environment for social engineering, mirroring techniques, that kind of matching, and helping people to remain calm. Then he was able to manipulate her easily into admitting things that he wanted her to admit. Like in the beginning, if we play the whole video, we'll link it so people can listen to it. But if you play the whole video, in the beginning, she's kind of defending the fact that she went on the news and she made all these accusations and she said all these things. She's defending that. And by the end of this clip, she's over there admitting, yeah, what she did was wrong. You know,
and that just goes to show you, I mean, it's all about lessening their defenses, gaining trust, calming them down, you know, making the situation not as bad as it sounds. I mean, that's verbatim of what a social engineering test is. I mean, we all think about social engineering as being, you know, something that you're possibly doing on the phone or things like that. But, I mean, it's also in person. I mean, when you're meeting with people or you're trying to get in through a security guard or you're trying to talk to somebody to give you badge access to somewhere you're not supposed to be, it's all about establishing that trust relationship, de-escalating a potential dangerous situation, and making sure that they feel comfortable with you.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Dave. Yeah, that's kind of cool. I like that. I'm glad you sent that clip, and I think we have another clip here too. This one, I guess, again, she's kind of getting worked up. This was later on in the interrogation. She's getting worked up, and they're trying to lay some groundwork that they have all these resources. Because I guess when she went on TV, at one point she accused somebody that ended up not being guilty. That, of course, we knew that after the fact, but she accused someone of committing the crime on TV. So I guess the police were trying to take control back of that situation. Let me cue this up here.
Yeah, I know you know what I'm talking about. That picture you said that was Zanny's apartment, that's Ricardo's apartment?
Right.
And now you're thinking maybe Zanny is Ricardo's something or other?
Or Amy.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of things that you've also said that I need clarification on, because if you're out there saying these things, I need to know why you're saying these things.
I'm not saying that anybody but authority. Absolutely.
But anyway,
because I wouldn't do that. I'm not going to accuse anybody in the public.
Well, here's the thing. There's a couple of things I want to share with you. And I want to show you that we're actually working on this. Contrary to what, if you think that we haven't worked on this, I'm here to tell you, Cindy, from the day, let me finish, let me talk now. I've listened to you talk for a while. I want to be able to share some things with you. I haven't stopped on this. I can tell you right now that about a dozen people are strictly assigned to this, just here. And that doesn't include FDLE or FBI. I know you had to talk to FBI yesterday. I'm sure they told you what their involvement is with this. It was 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So I know they told you what their involvement is in this and what they've been doing to help, right? So you know that this isn't just something that we're kind of passing aside. I haven't worked on anything but this.
So Matt, what's happening in this piece of the interrogation?
I think this clip is really interesting because to tie it back to the framework on the social engineering site, it's all about framing in this clip. He's putting context around everything. He starts out saying, "We need to know why you did this," and she again tries to kind of talk over him a little bit, and he sets the first frame by saying, I've listened to you, give me the common courtesy of listening to me, so he sets that tone right away. And then the other thing he puts context around is the investigation as a whole, by saying, we have dozens of officers working on this. I've been doing it full time. The FBI is involved. He's setting it up to say, we have overwhelming resources. We are many and you are one, Our word is good, simply by the sheer numbers that we have on this case.
So really, without slapping her down, he basically puts her in her place by using all these facts and the way you just said.
Yeah, and he does it again. It's non-confrontational.
He does it elegantly. He does it with the wind of, we're doing this for you. We're helping you out.
Exactly.
Along those lines, I think that there's a really subtle point in there where he almost went confrontational, and then he backed off and reworded what he was saying, where I believe, if I heard it properly, he was saying, regardless of what you think, and he thought better of it before he finished the sentence, and then he reworded that to be in a much more non-confrontational manner.
Yeah, he does a really good job. Is this the
grandmother, by the way?
Yeah, this is
the grandma.
When I'm simply not familiar with this case. Did she know the truth? Did she know what actually happened during this interview?
Yeah, I don't think she's been arrested in the case. I could be wrong on it, but her position changed throughout the case.
If I remember properly, the there was some indication early on in this case that the mother of the missing child may have had a role to play, but I'm not aware that the grandmother knew this, and so she's in a rather compromised position, I think, where she's interested in getting her grandchild back safely, but at the same time possibly facing the reality that her daughter may have done something horrible, and whether or not she can actually face that reality, and wanting to protect both her child and her grandchild, which may be two goals that are at odds with each other.
Yeah, it sounds like a very difficult position to be in, because on one hand you probably want to find your grandchild, on the other you want to protect your child.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And how do you, during the interview, how do you make her feel comfortable with that? And that's the hard part.
Yeah.
How do you? That's a good question. How do you answer that one?
Yeah, well, you got to get her to trust you, become friends in a sense. I mean, that's a tough thing. You got the read method is all about themes in a sense. Give them different themes and options. Why did you steal that money? Well, you can't help it. You're addicted to gambling, and you needed to feed that addiction. It wasn't your fault. It was gambling's fault. And you can basically put the blame on somebody else and make them feel comfortable with their actions.
Huh. That's an interesting tactic. So you actually kind of twist the whole conversation around, but again, doing it elegantly and politely. That's really interesting. I learned a lot today. I don't know about you guys. I learned a lot today from those clips and from you, Matt. Really going through a lot of these things. I appreciate that. I guess there was one more question that I had. And I know we talked about this briefly before we started the podcast, but I really wanted to kind of get an idea of this, because one of the things I've been reading about a lot lately is baselines, like setting a baseline for someone. Like you were telling us a story once about trying to tell someone's lying. So there was a whole article recently from Dr. Matsumoto. He's like one of the leading experts in microexpressions, and talking about how there used to be this theory that if people didn't look you in the eye, they automatically were lying. That's what the theory used to be. But research has shown that doesn't necessarily prove to be the case. That just because someone doesn't look you in the eye doesn't mean that they're a liar, especially if that's their baseline. That's what they normally do. Normally, just by nature, some people look down at the ground, or they don't like to look at people in the face. So you have to set that baseline before you interrogate. How would you do that? I mean, how would you set a baseline for somebody to know then when you start the interrogation if anything that they're doing could lead to you discerning if there's a lie or not?
Yeah, you need to start out with a period of when they're not stressed. If you bring them in, you get personal information. Somebody's not going to lie when they tell you their name, their date of birth, where they live, their phone number, all that type of information. Sometimes the best thing is to go pick them up wherever they are and, drive them back to the office. That gives you time, 20 minutes, half an hour of drive time, essentially, to where you can develop that baseline. It's normal conversation for them.
So would you, ask them questions about the case during that time, or what kind of questions would you ask to try to set a baseline?
Now, during that time, really nothing about the case. You're just getting their speech patterns, how they normally interact, so that you can see when you when you ask that stressful question that they don't want to answer, you can tell what's changed from their normal behavior. Once you hit on the part of guilt, in a sense, you can tell, does their face get red? Do they start sweating more? Do they pause? Do they stutter? Do they, what's different from how they normally answered questions? And it's not so much one thing of not making eye contact. It's kind of their whole persona. It's many different parts, and it all plays a role. And if you don't get that baselining up front, if you walk in the room and you start hitting those questions right away, you're missing out on a big portion of information.
That's an interesting thought, because in this article, Dr. Matsumoto was saying that they use that in some senses, like somebody who has heard this story that if you don't look people in the eye, you're lying. Well, when they're setting this baseline, FBI interrogators, they notice this guy's looking at the ground. He never looks them in the eye. And when he's telling the truth, what's your name? Oh, my name's Chris, and he's looking at the ground. And all of a sudden, they ask him a question about his involvement in this activity, and he stares them straight in the eye, stares them down, and tells them a complete lie, which they found out later was a complete lie, but it made sense now, like that his complete baseline changed. But I guess
it sounds a bit like a polygraph. What Matt said and what you're saying, it really does sound like a polygraph. I mean, at the end of the day, a polygraph doesn't measure whether you're telling a lie or you're telling the truth. It just measures your reaction to whatever you're saying. So it sounds pretty much the same, just on a different scale.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of where the polygraph gets things that you wouldn't be able to tell otherwise. The amount of sweat, and the rate of breathing. You can kind of ballpark those, but that gives actual figures and, puts a little, I guess, science around it.
So do people who give polygraphs for a living kind of have to be, do they know interrogation or?
Yeah, they go through a ton of training. I mean, the polygraph school that we sent some of our people to was 3 months long, where they go through and, a big portion of a polygraph is the initial interview. And if they're good at that, sometimes they can call somebody in for a polygraph, and generally, half the time the guilty people aren't going to show up anyway. So that's kind of an indicator, but they pull somebody into that room, they're sitting there, and the polygrapher just does the interview. Doesn't hook them up to the box or, kind of foregoes that portion initially. And if they're a good interview or a good interviewer, they can, a lot of times they'll get a confession, before they ever start the polygraph.
That's interesting. So the polygrapher is getting the
just
the
a
actual...
good interviewer with a really fancy prop, basically.
Yeah.
What I mean?
In a sense. Yeah, they'll look at the results and go through and use those to re-interview them, and find where their stress spots were, and then hit on those in a subsequent interview.
Yeah. I guess, despite the polygraph, actually being caught in the lie by a machine, why would anyone ever admit to being guilty for something knowing that the end result is I'm going to jail?
People want to be helpful. I mean, it's kind of, I don't know if it's human nature. I mean, it's kind of forced into you when you're growing up, Your parents always tell you, never tell a lie. You need to tell me the truth. Did you do this? And it makes kids grow up with that feeling of guilt. And when they become an adult, their parents aren't really an authority figure anymore, and that becomes, police are that authority figure. And they're pointing the finger, you need to tell me the truth. Did you do this? And whether it's, getting that off their chest, so to speak. And, if you can create a safe environment where they can do that and, they're not necessarily focusing on the consequences. They're focusing on, if I tell you this, it's going to help me feel better. It's going to help my case in the end somehow. You can, I guess you can kind of manipulate their incentives to get them to a point where they're okay admitting guilt.
Wow.
Matt, do you ever get a sort of a repercussion result where you make someone feel comfortable? I was peeping on this chick with white boots, and then you tell him, I prefer red, and then suddenly you slap handcuffs on him, and he's like, hey, but I thought you liked the red boots. Do you ever? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I thought it was okay. Why are you putting me in jail?
That's the tough part. Is that we never promise anything to anybody. If you tell me I promise you're not going to go to jail, because that can come back on you. Because if they say it, you're probably going to have to take them to jail. you're friendly, but you're not their friend. There's a fine line, I guess. But ultimately, there's a job to do, and you got to.
Do you ever get that though, like a sort of sense of disappointment? I thought you understood. I thought we were in this together. What happened here? Suddenly, you turned all nasty and you're putting handcuffs on me.
Yeah, it comes. People know. Deep down they know. If they admit, they're going to jail, and it's kind of a game in a sense. People know what they're doing. They know what's going to happen. They just need to be they need to get to that place where it's okay for them to tell you, and talk about it. And really, it's a game. They don't want to just admit it, but if you make them feel comfortable, they will.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I wish there were more videos and stuff of real interrogations that were out there that people could take a look at, because it is, it's kind of an art. And like the ones we listened to earlier, you could tell that guy was experienced and he knew what he was doing. And I remember some of my first interviews, and they were horrible. Kind of funny to watch, but you can learn a lot just about human nature by watching those.
Mm-hmm. That would be interesting to see some of those sometime. I learned a lot just from watching and listening to the audio that you found on the Kaylee case. Really interesting stuff there.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, excellent. Wow, Matt, I don't want to take up your whole night here, so I appreciate your time. And,
no problem.
Coming over to the podcast. Really, I think we all benefited a lot from.
Very much so. I really, really enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too. I learned a lot, and I think there's a lot of useful things here from a social engineering aspect that, from interrogation and interview, some of the things you talked about. Really excellent stuff.
How often do you get to interrogate an interrogator, huh?
Not too often. I don't know if we can call interrogating him waterboard you lady or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, look forward to that. Well, hopefully he signs up for that waterboard class.
Yeah.
Just don't want to do the practical.
Just look at the site, Offset Waterboarding 101. We'll start it off easy, okay, and then we'll go to the next stuff after that. So, thanks everybody again. Thank Matt Churchill for stopping in and talking to us about that, and Maddie, Relic, Elwood. I do have to mention thanks again to the sponsors, Johnny Reed and Company. That education is excellent. You can check out their site, www.reid.com, and you can get some training right there from their site, some real phenomenal stuff.
And having been through their live training, anyone that gets the opportunity to do so, I would definitely recommend it, because there's a lot of relevance that you can find between whether you're doing social engineering within the context of a penetration test, whether you're actually doing, say, direct interviews as part of an investigation, or whether you're just interacting with kids. They can all be, it's definitely skills that can be applied to any of those places and more.
Like Maddie said before, when I hear interrogation, I just don't think of pen testing, or security. But
can they help with free chicks?
They don't really talk about that, but maybe if you hang out at the jail, their judgment's impaired anyways. So.
Oh, that's cold, man.
Oh man. Well, before we go down that route, if anyone wants to contribute to socialengineer.org, you can check out the site or email us at contribute at social-engineer.org. Thanks, guys, for showing up and coming. One last thing, got to say, the music on the outro, if you're interested in finding out more about it, it's Michael Anthony. You can find him on ccmixer.org. He allowed us to use the music here for the podcast, so we hope you enjoy that. Tune in next month. We got some really awesome stuff coming up, so keep checking out the website and Twitter, and we'll update you guys there. Okay, we'll talk to you later.
Stay on track. Watch your back. Stay on track. Watch your back. Stay on track. Watch your back. Walk on. Walk on. gonna stay the same. Now the game isn't played that way. You've got to stay on track. Watch your back. Stay on track. Watch your back. Looking around you and thinking it's okay. Forgetting about the things that you did yesterday. But if you only knew that the game isn't played that way. Stay on track, watch your back. 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 Stay on track, watch your back.